I'm getting nervous. I'm here.
Shalom Aleichem, Kvayda
Shalom,
Rav.
shalom, shalom, Rabbi. I'm so sorry. Never late, but when I'm late, it's not within my. All right. Don't worry. I'll make up for the lost minute, Bez Hashem. You guys all ready?
We're all ready.
Everyone's ready. Where are we
Ready.
holding? I think you guys are Kidra Chaisa, right? You guys are Kidra Chaisa. Yeah, that's what you guys are. Okay, let's get to work, Bez Hashem. Okay, so we're holding him at Hashem Rabbi Isai. The Geshmak Sugya, Kidra Chaisa. This is really the end of the Sugya of Shehiyah. Bez Hashem, then we could start Chazar. The Sugya of Kidra Chaisa will bring us into one type of Shaila, which is Kidra Chaisa in general, and do we have the heter today? One Sugya. And then Bez Hashem, I want to talk about what eitzah do we do in a situation of where we're a bit stuck and we have to somehow do Shehiyah before Shabbos. What do we do when we're stuck? What do we do if it's Ben Hashmashis? Are there any Ateirim? So Bez Hashem, we'll go Pamela, we'll go slow and try to figure out here, excuse me, what Ateirim we have. The Gemara in Shabbos, and Taf Yud Chesed Beis, really brought in the Rambam, brings this heter of Kidra Chaisa. Kidra Chaisa shori lanucha erev Shabbos im chashecha. You're allowed to take this raw dish and put it into the tanner on erev Shabbos as the Shabbos comes in. Why? Very important words. Im chashecha. We'll come back to this word. Why? Because since it's not roy for the guests, asucha meiser daita minei. The says that we've been learning for the last month for the ganze Sfira, the sugya of Shehiyah, we have to make sure that the food is not going to be a goyrim for us and give us a Yetzirah to stoke the coals so that we'll have hot food and cooked food for Shabbos. And that's why the sheet of the Rabbanon is even fully cooked is a problem. And that's why we pass in Chanan Yalk upon him. Michael Ben Drusai is already allowed, but under Michael Ben Drusai, we're nervous you're going to stoke. If we can get a situation of where he won't stoke, and this is the lumdis that we've been saying the whole time, this is sheet of the Mishnah Berurah over and over again, that the lumdis over here is not a lumdis of heker. The lumdis of our sugya is a lumdis of a hesach hadas. Hesach hadas means that at Kama, like I've said many times, he shows us he's not in the cooking process. He shows us the chef hat is off, his apron is off. If he could do something to show us I'm not in the cooking process, so then we're not afraid he's going to lose himself and he's going to be stoking the coals. We had different haifanim about to do this. One way to show us he's not worried is if it's a certain amount cooked for, according to Chananya. Once it gets Michael Ben Drusai, so then we're not worried he's going to stoke the coals. He's not. We know it's a certain amount cooked. He knows in the end of the day he'll have what to eat, or he knows in the end of the day that it's going to get cooked by that point. We saw another eitzah of grufa ketuma, of a blech, which shows a person that's in a cooking process, he doesn't cover the flame, he doesn't make the flame worse when he's in the cooking process. He's obviously shown us he's not in the cooking process, he's in the heating up process. Now comes the Gemara in Shabbos with a new eitzah. And this is the eitzah of if he could do something to show us I'm not in the cooking process, because you see, I know that my food will certainly not get cooked by the time my meal is ready. And by tomorrow's meal, it'll anyways be cooked. So then I'm obviously not going to be in the cooking process. That's called Kidra Chaisa. That says the Hilchos Rambam, and this is obviously the makor of all the Rishonim that learned that the sugi in general, in order to get heteidim, is going to be based on hasachas das. If he's mesiach das and he's not in the cooking process, so then that shows us that we have nothing to worry about, and then he could set up the system erev Shabbos. And this Abayisai is basically a very useful heter. We'll tell a person on erev Shabbos, a few minutes he comes to the country. Sometimes a person goes up to the country and he gets there. He didn't realize that is the I-95 still there? I don't remember. But he didn't realize how packed and crowded it's going to be. He said, sure. From Flatbush to Monticello, you could do it in 3 hours. He just forgot that it's erev Shabbos and takes 16. So Meli gets there 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And he gets there. This is the first time he went to the mountains. And now he gets there, he realizes like he forgot the hot plate at home, he forgot this at home, he forgot everything at home. So now he wants to know, what does he do? He has to put up a cholent. He has to put up a cholent. It's right before Shabbos. All he has is a stovetop, and it's no time now to be dealing with crock pots and this and hot plates, and he doesn't have. So now he has a pot, and he has potatoes, and he has beans, and he has meat. So we tell him, Gewaldig, wonderful. When's the challenge for? Is it for tonight? No. Go and take raw meat, l'chayra, put in the raw barley, do it right before Shabbos. Once he does it right before Shabbos, so l'chayra, we're good to go. Now, it's true it won't be ready for tonight, but there's no chance it'll be ready for tonight. So Meli is Mesach Das Minei, and even though it's on an open flame, and HaRav, it's totally not cooked, but since by tomorrow, he doesn't need to stoke, it'll be cooked anyways. For tonight's meal, it won't help to stoke. So l'chayr, this is the Gewaldike Eitzah of Kiddush Chaisa. A Kiddush Chaisa. And this, the Mishnah Berurah brings down in Siman and Zayin, Sivkot and Memvav, he's quoting from the Rabbeinu Tam, the Sefer Yasher, Ein lahakel gam kein bekol davar levad, only thing we make on is Kiddush Chaisa, shenein royes, sheidei chitoi memeretz l'sbashal af balayla. He says this only works, and this only works if it's something that he knows that it won't help to stoke for tonight. The only thing that works is by Kiddush Chaisa. I'll read you the lashon really of the Baal Tanya. It's a little bit more explicit. The siach daitai ad lemacher shebelayla lo yeroy adayin afi michata b'chalim ubechol alayla ad lemacher it'll cook af b'loy chita klal. As I say, that's the basic heter of Kiddush Chaisa. It's not necessary to stoke for tomorrow, and for tonight it won't help to stoke. And this is a gewaldige heter. A gewaldige heter. Avada, if he does this, he's going to have to be careful, because now you can't snoop around in the challah and see what's going on. Rav Henkin said everything should be cooked before Shabbos, because anything that's not cooked before Shabbos, we're running the risk that you're going to take off the lid, snoop around, move it closer to the fire and whatever. So fine. But what could you do? You came up to the country, it's a couple hours before Shabbos, and you need to have food for Shabbos. You need to have food for Shabbos lunch. The only thing is that Verstetzach, he's going to have to, and more so actually, one more moment. He's not only that, let's say, before she came up to the country, she knew that it might get late, the balabasta. So she cooked basically the challah before Shabbos. So now she's got a problem, because what, you're going to put it on an open fire and whatnot. So now maybe you want to get the sheet of Chananya also. So here comes along the Rambam. He says, not only is it enough if the whole entire pot is not raw, is raw. He says, even if you put in one thing that's raw, that there's a maisa, which is a hasachas das. That shows us that you're not in the cooking process. So you take in something, it's got to be, the Mishnah Berurah says, something that won't get cooked. So you take a piece of meat, or I think a potato. The Olam will tell me what they think. I think a potato certainly takes a very long time to cook. And I think certainly, and even if you'll tell me, yeah, but the potato can get the Michael Ben Drusoi by the meal, but over here we go with Svara. Nobody wants to eat it in the Michael Ben Drusoi by the meal. So certainly it takes 5 hours, let's say, to cook this potato. Who knows what? All you would have to do is throw in one potato, and you have this chalent. So if you have a raw chalent, or if you have a cooked chalent, but it has one raw item in the chalent, so that's the heter of Kiddush Chaisa, which shows that he's Mesach Das Minei. That's Adkan, the Akdama to the Sugya. So once again, let's read now the Shulchan Aruch and see if we could apply this halacha l'maisa. This would be a wonderful heter. So the Mishnah Berurah over here, I read the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says, he says, Oishu chai shaloin is bashal klal. The first thing you have to know about Kiddush Chaisa is it can't be cooked at all. What's a pshat? What do you mean? If it would be cooked a little tiny bit, a few minutes worth of cooking, so then still probably it's not going to be ready tonight, and it's anyways going to be ready tomorrow. No, here the Shulchan Aruch Atzuga like the klal tonight. It has to be that it's not cooked at all. I guess it's kind of light plug. We can't start telling the person. This one's going to say, nah, it's only a tiny bit cooked. It's not going to be ready by tonight, excuse me. And this one will say, okay, this one is, I'm pretty sure it won't be ready by tonight. So we made a klal. We said, totally not cooked. Then we know bevadai, it's not ready for tonight's meal. And everything else, we have to be chayshish until it gets to Michael Ben Drusai, which anyways, we know Michael Ben Drusai, we're Mekel, the Ashkenazim, Akopanim are Mekel, and we saw even the Sfardim are Mekel B'diyah. But this is what we have to be ma'akid. Comes again the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, Oishu chai shaloi nisbashal klal. Over here, there's two Mishnah Berurahs Very important Mishnah Berurah. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. I'm sorry, but I just ran in from a meeting. But the Mishnah Berurah, it says in Sivkat in Yud, Shaloin is Bashal. Listen to Mishnah Berurah. Pirish, Oz Shari Litnoi Samach L'Shkia Mamish. You got to put it on the fire right around Shkia time. Avalim Nitnoi Miboidiyim Aser. Listen to this. He says, if you put it on even a few minutes before Shkia, we'll have to see how much. But if you're putting it on before Shkia, it's already Aser. Why? Because once it gets a little bit cooked, then already you don't have the heter of Kiddush Chaisa. The heter of Kiddush Chaisa is only that it's not cooked in the slightest. If it's salik, you'd have to take it off when Shabbos comes, unless Ellen Kain is bashal called tzarchai. Interesting, Mishnah Berurah. He says Ellen Kain is bashal called tzarchai. Shouldn't he say Ellen Kain is bashal kamachal ben drusai? So you have to know that the style of the Mishnah Berurah is that over here he's explaining the Sefer Shulchan Aruch. And the Sefer Shulchan Aruch goes with the Shita that it has to be Nisbashal Kotzarcha, and I guess Mitztamik Ralai. So at this point, the Mishnah Berurah is just explaining the Sefer Shulchan Aruch. But in Hanami, we would have to translate this, that if it got even a little bit cooked, it's a problem, unless it got the Michael Ben Drusai. If it got the Michael Ben Drusai, then it's okay. That's Mishnah Berurah in Sivkat in Yud, which is a very important thing. This means that the Hagam, like I said, it's only been cooked for a little bit. It's a tiny bit cooked, light plug. So then the Mishnah Berurah says like this. He says, "Klal hainu Sivkat Yud Aleph dafilu hucha matav shel nami muter l'shaisa." Listen to Mishnah Berurah. He says, "But what if it now the food got hucham, which we have to explain, but it seems to be got heated up. So once it got heated up, so now maybe you'll say that's already a problem." He says, "No, that's mutter. We're not goyzer shemichata, kevin the etzem abishal loyinis bashal klal." Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, it all depends. Did it get this bashal klal? Shartzian aval in this bashal ksas. If it got a little bit cooked, even less than Michael Ben Drusai, it's awesome. Now, Baisai, what does it mean? These words, loyinis bashal klal. Mishnah Berurah says hucham is allowed. It got heated up. So it sounds like we have to figure out what's this middle of madrega. If it got a little bit cooked, already awesome. Because then we say he might come to stoke. If it's not a little bit cooked, even though it's hucham, then says the Mishnah Berurah, that's mutter. If we would only have a Mishnah Berurah, I think most of us would have said, what's hucham? I think most of us would have assumed that hucham means that it's heated up. What's heated up? The water is hot, which that's very negeya, Rabbi Yisai, because he puts on, let's say it's a few minutes before Shkia. You put into a crock pot. If you put it into a crock pot, this would be very negeya. You put into a crock pot, the lady will light candles. She lights it about 20 minutes, 18 minutes, whatever. Right before she lights, she puts up the crock pot. When you're going to put up the crock pot, so she puts the crock pot, let's say on low. Now what happens? You put the crock pot on low. By the time Shkia comes, what's going to be? So the water, Mistama, is going to be hot. Mistama, I think at that point, the water will be hot. And I tried it on my crock pot, and the water at that point was hot. But not all crock pots are created equal. But it's definitely like a special klal. At that point, once you hit Shkia, you put it up 20 minutes before Shkia. So the meat isn't going to be cooked. Nothing at all is going to be cooked. Not even the slightest bit it's going to be cooked. But the water is certainly going to be yatsa lettuce bite. If all I had was a Sefer Mishnah Berurah, I think you would all say the same thing. You'd all say that since it's yad saledis by, the water is yad saledis by, that's not a problem because it's a dayan loinis bashal klal. This is, I would think, this is how everybody here would have learned the Mishnah Berurah, lulei what I'm about to say. Kum again the Chazain Ish. And this is a very, I suppose, a controversial Chazain Ish. The Chazain Ish in Simin, Lamed Zayin, Sivkat and Chav Beis. Let me see here if I have the Lashon. Excuse me. One moment. Here. The Chazain Ish is in Lamed Zayin, Sivkat and Chav Beis. He says, by Mishnah Berurah, Sivkat and Yud Aleph, Kosav, Filu hucham mutter. Even though it's hot, it's mutter. Kavan that it wasn't misbashal. Venira, the Ratzah Loimar. Over here, you're being taught how to learn the Mishnah Berurah from the Chazon Ish. He says, Nira Ratzah Loimar. Over here is a shear from the Chazon Ish, how to read the Mishnah Berurah. Nira, the Ratzah Loimar, the hucham, the loyigi liyatzah. Says the Chazon Ish, unbelievable chumrah. The Chazon Ish says, what does it mean that the Mishnah Berurah says that it can't have gotten this special klal? He says it can't even be that the water got to Yatza Ledis by. But if the water got to Yatza Ledis by, so then already that's called Chilas Abishal. This is what the Mishnah Berurah, how the Chazon Ish learns the Mishnah Berurah. In other words, he's telling you, if you'd learned the Mishnah Berurah, I think most of us never would have had a havamina like this. I think most of us would have learned that even though it's hot, it's hucham, the whole mat is hot, but it didn't start to cook. It didn't start to cook. And we would have thought that that's still mutter. The Chazon Ish is teaching you that you're learning the Mishnah Berurah incorrectly. And that berega, the water already gets hot, that's called nisbashal. That's already called nisbashal. Now, it's a little scary. You want to argue that you want to say this is machlekes Chazon Ish in the Mishnah Berurah, that's one thing. But you want to argue on the Chazon Ish and how he's learning the Mishnah Berurah, you lose your cheshek, because machlekes me and the Chazon Ish, how to learn the Mishnah Berurah, we lose. The only thing is, I have a very big pella over here. If you look in the Sharatzian and Zivkat and Yud Gimel, it's a big pella. Sharatzian, Zivkat and Yud Gimel. He's going on this. He says, since it hasn't started a bishul, says the Sharatzian, aval, if it got even a little bit, and it's under Michael ben Drisai, he said, then it's aser. Rabbi say, that's aser. What do you mean? If it got a little bit, it got cooked a little bit, but it's under Michael ben Drisai, it's aser. Rabbi say, if the Mishnah Berurah is matcha, what's the only case that's aser? Under Michael ben Drisai, when it got cooked a little bit. In order for it to get cooked a little bit, it certainly has to be hot. So the Mishnah Berurah should say a much bigger chiddush. Aval, if the water got the Yatz Ledis by, so then it's already aser. You don't have to go, when you're trying to say something is aser, you don't say, but if it cooked a little bit under Michael ben Drisai, then it's already aser. What do you mean? There's 35, 40 minutes in between what you just described. Say, aval, if it's even hot, if it even got hucham to Yatz Ledis by, and then you'll incorporate many, many more cases. So to learn this pshat in the Mishnah Berurah, like I said, you can't argue on the Chazon Ish how to learn the Mishnah Berurah, but it's an incredible, incredible chiddush up to learn how to learn the Mishnah Berurah. And also, the Chazon Ish, basically kimat avekemach the ganze heter of Kiddush. Because according to this, once the water gets hot, you lost the heter of Kiddush. This to me is an incredible chiddush. Incredible chiddush. I'll say even stronger. Maybe the water got to Yatz Ledis by, but a lot of times the water can get to Yatz Ledis by, but the meat is not yet Yatz Ledis by. When you learn kashrus, you see that that's a concept that certainly exists. And therefore, this pshat in the Chazon Ish, lulei the Chazon Ish, I would have learned, like I saw afterward, tak in the Or Tzion, in Chelik Aleph, in Siman Chav Aleph, he says, "Anis daiti nira, even though you put it on before mi by and it's Yatz Ledis by, that's still called Kiddush." He says, "Umutter, you're allowed to leave it on an open flame, and even though the flame can get very hot, that's bashal v'loy bashal. That's not called slightly cooked. Slightly cooked means the meat itself has been affected." And now the Chazon Ish himself goes on, excuse me, and he says, what's the case? Because according to the Chazon Ish, it's going to come out very difficult. Where do you have a case of Kiddush Chaisa? So the Chazon Ish says that you're going to have to say that he mamish put it on 5 minutes before Shkia. Something like that, even less. I don't know, even less than 5 minutes before Shkia. Because Mamanashach, everything says the Mishnah Berurah starts by Shkia. So Mamanashach, if it's already Yatz Ledis by the liquid, so then you'll have to add your Kiddush Chaisa. Elamai, what's the case? So the Chazon Ish learns that the case is you're putting it on mamish 5 minutes before Shkia, which is a very, very big chiddush to learn that that's the case that Chazal were talking about when they spoke about Kiddush Chaisa, because it comes out that it's almost impossible to have Kiddush Chaisa. Most people are lighting the candles. We do 18 minutes, others do different time. But who is lighting the candles 3 minutes before Shabbos? I mean, who's lighting the candles 3 minutes before Shkia? Because right before you light the candle, you're going to put on the so I guess the case will be that the lady lit the candles and the husband's going to put it on, and he's going to put it on 3 minutes before Shkia, because Adkami puts it on 5 minutes before Shkia, the liquid's going to get to Yatzaledis pipe. So he has to put it on 3 minutes before, so that the liquid can't. Lule this, we would have learned a totally different shot. We would have learned that you could put it on about 20 minutes beforehand. And when you put something on 20 minutes beforehand, say, the liquid's going to get hot and the actual meat is going to get hot, but it's not going to start to cook until after Shkia, and then already it'll be the din of Kiddush Chaisa. This is a machlekes how to learn, but okay, it's a little bit difficult, like I said, to argue on the Mishnah Berurah, to argue on the Chazon Ish in how he learns. He's teaching you how to learn the Mishnah Berurah is a little bit difficult. That's one issue in applying Kiddush Chaisa. Is maybe once it's already out to let this, but you can't apply Kiddush Chaisa. Another issue is very interesting over here. There's a Bir Halacha. I'd like to read you the Lashon. Excuse me.
You put on the Bir Halacha, please, Rav Pesach.
Bir Halacha. He says like this. He says, what if you have a situation of where it's a very hot oven and it could be ready for the Suda? Hagam, your intention is not for the Suda.
Page 74.
Yeah, Doadam has it. I'll read it off of yours.
Sorry, page 72. Here we go, 72. Dibra Maskal Ashoisei, correct?
This one is Dibra Maskal.
There's two Bir
This one
Halacha.
is Shoisei or
Mesiach Daitei, the one in the bottom of the
yeah,
page.
Mesiach. I think this one's Mesiach. Nira. Da filu mataner choymei rav. Excuse me. A choymei rav v'yochel is bashal be'eze shoyis balayla b'meshach hazman. It's very hot and it can get there. So Bir Halacha says, "Ava bikenim ein darken shel bnei adam lahamtim b'sudasin kol kach." He says, let's say it's not the derech, it's saying this food is going to be ready, let's say your meal is going to be 8 o'clock at night. And this thing is going to be ready at, 12 o'clock at night. So Mishnah Berurah says, then you still have the heter of Kiddush Chaisa. Kain is a Lashon Rambam. He says, nobody's going to wait for their meal 3-4 hours. The Rambam says this by Sasius and Tormesim, Mesha Ein Tzrichim Bishul Rav, V'daita Aleim Lechol out there. Mashma L'gabe Kiddush Chaisa, it has to be at the time when you eat. It has to be at the time when you eat. Let me explain this a little bit. I saw that Rav Elyashiv is brought in the Shvutz Yitzchak in page 132. He says, the derech of Bnei Adam is to eat when they come home from shul. So he says it depends. Kavor kama shoyis balayla danu tanchila. Rav Elyashiv says, let's say it'll be ready within the meal. Let's say, it's 8, I guess it makes a difference, winter and summer. But let's say I have something and I would put it up, and technically it could theoretically be ready. Let's say the meal starts 8, it theoretically could be ready by 9:30. Again, most people by 8 o'clock is the fish, and and then there's the soup, and that's already 9 o'clock, and I'm already to starting my main. For 9:30 and 9:45 and even 10 o'clock, says Rav Elyashiv, but that's the way you learn Pashup Shad in the Mishnah Berurah, that you would wait for. The Lashon of the Bir Halacha, if you look good, the Bir Halacha's Lashon is Afa Pikinim Ein Darken Shvedam Hand to be said Kol Kach. It has to be the way he's learning something mugzam, exaggerated. Nobody's going to wait 3-4 hours, like I said, 12 o'clock at night. But let's say it'll be ready by 9:30 at night. You see this more in the Aruch HaShulchan and Sif Ches. He says, "B'gai government muter ashol legamri afilu b'toner avagav the ad gimel v'doy shalos b'layla." It'll be mispashal. Loicha shinan jiyamtim bezuda Shabbos shel ma'ariv zman rav kaderech b'nei Yisrael. They're going to eat it normally, but it comes out a very big difference. It comes out, what if the food with taka be ready? Let's say, if you're going to, and don't forget, if in my system I could turn it up and it could theoretically get ready, hagam that right now my fire is on a low, but if I could raise it and it could get to a point of where it would be ready by the meal, so he's saying what's called the meal, meaning it'll be ready by in the middle of the meal, So then people would wait a little bit, says Rabbi Yashiv, in the middle of their meal. And that would be another hagbala, limitation, in the kula of Kiddush Chaisa. In other words, if you have a situation of where it would theoretically be ready in the middle of the meal, so then Vaita, you're not going to have the heter of Kiddush Chaisa. It's only if it Vada is not going to be ready no matter what. It'll be only ready by 12 o'clock at night. That's already, nobody's going to wait for their meal till 12 o'clock at night. But if it's going to be ready beforehand, theoretically, then I would push off my meal a little bit. I would slightly push off my meal. That's another limitation. More so. This is a very interesting zach. You see in the Bir Halacha, he says, what if the choymai is extremely hot and excuse me. Let's say I put something up raw. New case. Let's say I put something up raw, and theoretically, I could raise the fire and I could have it ready for the meal. So the people we just read in the Bir Halacha, no way. And that's the pashtus. Because the lumdus of Kiddush Chaisa says it's a gather of a hesach das. He shows us he's Mesiach das. He shows us he's not interested in the cooking process because it won't be ready for the meal. But if you theoretically can have it ready for the meal, then what shows us that he's Mesiach das? He's fakert. He's going to stoke even more. Kiddush Chaisa is not a gzeirus sakosiv. It's not a takana. It's a lumdus. It makes sense. If it's something that would be ready by the time of the meal and you could flare up the flame, then adarabba. Of course, you don't have that of Kiddush Chaisa. Adarabba. If anything, it's more of a sibah to be machmir because you're for sure going to have to stoke to make sure it's ready by the time the meal comes. The Chazon Ish argues on this Bir Halacha. He says an incredible kula. A minute ago we saw an incredible chumrah from the Chazon Ish. Over here the Chazon Ish says an incredible chumrah, a kula. He says that no, if al pi roiv, since al pi roiv, raw things are not ready by the time the meal comes. So he says Chazal made a loy plug lekula. Chazal made a loy plug, and Chazal said that adkama, that you put something raw, and it's a type of thing which takes a long time to cook. Again, that you have a choymai rav and you can get it cooked. But Chazal gave a kula, like a maisa, to show that I'm not interested in the cooking process. I put in something raw. Shlomo Zalman said this is mamish tamua. It's very difficult to say. The Shulchan Shlomi said this is sarachin. That to say such a thing, it's not a lumdis. Excuse me, it's a lumdis. It's not a takana that Chazal said when you put in something raw, that's a gzeirus hakosiv of Mesiach das. So this is a kula that hard to use, which leaves us that how are we going to use Kiddush Chaisa? We're going to have to make sure that even the water is not hot, because the Chazon Ish taught us how to learn the Mishnah Berurah. We're going to have to make sure that it's not something that can be ready for the meal. And not only that, we have to make sure it's not going to be something that's going to be ready in the middle of the meal. If you get all of these, so then you would have the heter of Kiddush Chaisa. Now, l'chayra, my example of a cholent in a crock pot is doable. Then you taka can have it because taka, if you put up a crock pot, you could do it right before Shabbos. You do it 5 minutes before the wife. She'll be makabel Shabbos. The husband will put up the cholent. He'll turn it on. Even if you would put it to high, it's certainly not getting to be cooked by the time that the meal starts. It's not getting cooked by the middle of the meal. It would take at least until 12 o'clock at night. And therefore, that would be an eitzah. And you could have a situation where the water is not cooked either. If you're doing it 5 minutes before on a low setting, on a crock pot, the water is not going to be yatzolet by the time Shkia comes. The only case that we would have of Kiddush Chaisa today would be a crock pot. And the truth is, like I mentioned before, a crock pot is not the biggest deal because why do you have to falazich on that? Just take silver foil, put it inside your crock pot. Now you have a blech. So we mentioned put the balls in so that the heat can come in, or put in a piece of baking paper or something like that. So therefore, it's kimat nish gemalt, the whole case by us a Kiddush Chaisa, because by a crock pot, it's true you could do it, but you don't really need to do it. You can just put silver foil. I guess the case is he went to the mountains and all he had there is a crock pot, and he realizes right beforehand that he hasn't started putting up the cholent and he can't find silver foil. So in that case, we would tell him 5 minutes before Shkia that the husband should put on the crock pot and should turn it on. It's not going to be ready by the time the meal comes, and it'll be ready by tomorrow anyways, and even the water won't be hot, and therefore that would be the case. But Masha'in came, let's say now he comes to the mountains and he says, okay, but what am I doing for the Friday night meal? So he wants to put chicken in the oven and it's raw. And he'll put it on 2 minutes before Shabbos. He'll put it into the oven and he'll turn it on. Of course, that's no good. He's having it for the meal. There's no heter over there. That's exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to have it for the Friday night meal. I can't say he put it in raw. So this ve'oid, and I'll be moisef, that our ovens in the Kisvei, Rav Henkin, in Chelik Beis, in the 19th page, Rav Henkin, Zechron Levracha, he says in Milsa the Mistaber, says something very Mistaber. He says, today our ovens, the etzim, they can get up higher and higher, and the heat can get higher and higher. And kimat in our ovens, there's nothing that does not take 2 hours to cook. And therefore, in our ovens, kimat, it's arop the ganze heter, so arop the ganze heter of kitchachais. I'll read you the lashon of Rav Henkin, Zechron Levracha. I hope the Olam had this marmokim. It's very nice marmokim. Actually, I hope the Olam has this marmokim because it looks like even I don't have it. And un momento.
What marmokim is the Rav?
Oh, here I found it. Ein lanu lismay al heter shel kidra chayse betanur shalanu. Says Rav Henkin, in Makaderis oimnim al pas bach mishum shibes shaynes reishis. Din kedera chayse negeya dafka samach lechashecha. Says first of all, who knows when's man samach lechashecha? It's not clear. There's a machleke shkia. The shaynes. He says betanurenu yachol avashal afilu b'minutim achadim, with a few minutes.
Page 19.
He says you'll certainly come to, even if it's on low now, but certainly you could raise it and make it higher. Therefore, kimat, we don't have the heter of kidra chaysa. Which brings us to the major shaila. So what do we do, Rabbi Yisai? Here I am. I've come to the bungalow. I somehow dealt with my cholent. The cholent, maybe we have an eitzah. The cholent, I guess, we'll put it on the fire, or we'll put it in a crock pot. I don't even know. The truth is, Rabbi Yisai, you know what? If you take a cholent, you tell me, if you take cholent and put it into a pot on Erev Shabbos, and you would put it on the highest, it wouldn't get cooked it wouldn't take, in 3 hours, would it get cooked? Let's say you put it on the highest. No, not in a crock pot. Because in a crock pot, I think it's pasha.
It'll be edible.
It'll be edible, or it'll be, because edible won't be enough. Because Michael Ben Risai is not enough for here. We have to see, he's Mesiach Das, if it's not going to be right to be eaten. So if I would take my cholent, take potatoes, beans, barley, whatever meat, put it in and put it on high on the stovetop, on the fire of the stovetop, it's not going to get cooked by let's say 3 hours. It won't get cooked.
Depends what cook is. That's cool for what we're discussing. What does cook mean?
Michael Ben Risai won't be enough for this. Would have to be that it would be something that a person would eat at the Friday night meal. So it could be that there is a sheet of the cold fire
on a stove after 3 hours. I think it would get cooked. No,
I would have also thought, though. I wonder if it's a bit of a suffix. The only thing I can say is like this: a crock pot for sure we'd be able to make on, because that for sure won't get cooked, even on high. On the stovetop, I'm a little bit chayshish that it wouldn't get cooked. I'm not clear. And then I probably would be makel to apply what the Bir Lacha brings down from the Kolba, the Bir Lacha, and Dibra Matzal HaShoisei. Should be the Eved, Shlis Michael Zerak, Lo Ye Rogol LaSois came. The Bir Lacha brings a Kolba, that Poshag Minig, that they're makel on Cholent, LaShoisei Agabe Esh, Avagav the Mitztamek V'Yafad, because the Messiah Das, Void Shemachasin, Hagachalim, which means that there's a smart to say that maybe if I'm mefurish of das, that I'm doing something just for tomorrow, so then maybe that goes into the heter of kidra chayse. Now, everything you heard today was not like that, because Mishmur is not makel on this lechatchila. But it could be that b'di'evid, there could be a bit of a makom to be makel when somebody has the das to be eating it for tomorrow. Plus, like I said, I don't even know if it'll be cooked by tonight's meal. No, and you have the chazayin ish, that the chazayin ish said that raw is a gzeres hakosiv, and when you put something on raw, the fact that it'll be ready for tonight's meal, the chazayin ish was makel, the loika bir lacha, and the loika shulchan. But maybe b'tzira, if you put all these three things together, so what's our case? He comes to the country, if he has a crack pot, Gavaldik. If you can put the silver foil in, even better. Then there's no shaila at all. He can't, he has a pot. What does he do? So he puts it on 5 minutes before Shkia, and and he lets it sit, even though if he would put it to the highest, it would probably cook by 3 hours. But first of all, maybe it wouldn't cook. Second of all, the Chazon Ish was mekel if it's raw. And third of all, we have the kolboy. So that would be an eitzah for lunch.
What
So
about the Yatzeletas problem?
The Yatzeletas problem, you'd have to make, so it's not fair. You'll put it on a low flame. In other words, all I was explaining was that I was asking, could it physically get cooked by the time the meal comes? Then I'd be nervous that he would stoke and get it cooked. That's what we were coming to explain. But for Shteitzach, he's going to put it on a low flame. He's not putting it on a high flame for the next 12 hours. It's going to burn otherwise. So he's going to put it on a low flame. Our question was, what's it going to help to put it on a low flame? You can just put it on a high flame. It'll be cooked by the time the meal comes. So now, first of all, I don't know if it'll be cooked. Number two, the Chazon Ish says it's exeris akosif. Raw food is mutter. That's it. Raw food is mutter, even if it'll be ready by the meal. Raw food on Erev Shabbos, they weren't geyser on, because in general, that's a chadas agam. That's a very, very big chiddush. And number three, we have the kolbay, that anyways, he has das and zin, that he's not eating it for tomorrow. And the kolbay learns that's the ganze heter of kiddush chaisa. But upon him, you can make sure it's low. And then in 5 minutes, it's not going to get yatzeledes by. And even, you know what? L'maisa kulei hayv ulai b'diavad, even if it would get the water cooked and he needs it for tomorrow, you have the pashup shot and how to learn the Mishnah Berurah. Even though the Chazon Ish said not like this, but the pashup shot in the Mishnah Berurah is that if the water is hot, but the food is not yet cooked at all, is also makom to be mekel. So we somehow dealt with the challenge for tomorrow. Is that crystal clear, Rabbi Say? And now the shaila is, but tonight's meal, don't forget, you just got to the country and you got to eat tonight. Now we're certainly not having cholent tonight because it's not going to be ready till tomorrow. That's the whole point. So he wants to put chicken. So what's he going to do? If he puts chicken in the oven in kiddush chaisa, and he doesn't have a blech, and he doesn't have a hot plate, don't forget. If he puts the chicken in the oven, kiddush chaisa, that's a galechta. He's doing it for tonight. That's a galechta. It's not. There's nobody in the world that can help you on this one. Not the Chazon Ish, not anybody. He's doing it for tonight. So obviously this isn't going to help you. He's putting the food in the oven for the next hour and a half, and it's going to be cooked by the time the meal comes. That's exactly what he's trying to do. So there's nothing that nobody can help you on this one. So Elamai. So now we have to figure out, and this Rabbi Say starts a different topic, which is quite interesting chiddush. I'm going to run it past the Olam, and you tell me what you think. I was pondering a thought. I want the Olam to tell me what they think. Maybe we can come up with a plan. We'll say like this. He's going to take the chicken. What's our problem? We have to make sure that the food is, once the food is Michael ben Drisai, and a third will be Michael b'diavad on a third because it's a shasat chak. So once the food is a third cooked, we're good to go. What's the problem? And then that's our klal, that we're going to hold the Chananya, b'diavad, once it's a third cooked, we're not afraid, everything's fine. What's our problem? Our problem is we're a few minutes before night. It's not going to be a third cooked. It's going to take a half an hour. He's holding, it's, 7:15 in the mountains, and he just wakes up now. Gewalt, what's going to be with the chicken and this and that. He realizes now he doesn't have a hot plate. Again, if you had a hot plate in this, because I'm tight, put the food on, everything's great. But actually, a hot plate won't even help anyways, because he won't be able to probably cook the chicken by the meal on a hot plate. So this guy is in a shtoch. It's 7:15. Shkia is about 7:45, 7:50. He has here his chicken. He needs it for tonight's meal. He needs it by 9:30. What do we do? So do kiddush chaisa. Okay, so kiddush chaisa is a joke. There's no kiddush chaisa going to help over here. He's doing it for the night meal. No kiddush chaisa. So I was thinking like this. Maybe we're going to tell him like this. We're going to tell him, put it on right now into the oven. Put it on 250, 300, whatever you put it on. Now, what's going to happen? By shkia, it's going to be a big problem, right? By shkia, you know what's going to be? This chicken is going to be not a third cooked. It's going to be a fifth cooked, a quarter cooked. But that's not Michael ben Drisai, according to anybody. We need to be a third cooked. I'll say, wait a minute. By shkia, you want, I'll be a quarter cooked? Yeah, I'll be a quarter cooked. So no, it's also, once you hit shkia, it's checkmate, right? No. There's a heter of shvusim ben hashmashis. We know that Chazal gave a heter of the shvusim on ben hashmashis, and that in certain situations, you're allowed to do a drabanan, the tzoyrech, and one of the examples in Shulchan Aruch and Shin Men Beis is Oynik Shabbos, certainly the Suda Shabbos. So one of the examples is that the shvusim on ben hashmashis, Chazal weren't geyser. So over here, what can we do? We'll be at a quarter cooked by the time that shkia comes. I'm not saying this is l'chatchila. So a quarter cooked when shkia comes. Now, How long do I have the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis? This is a very, very big sugya. There's a Rav Moshe in Dalet Samech Beis. Rav Moshe basically says we have a suffix, what's the real shkia, and we have a suffix, when's the nacht, and the goyin shkia, and the Rabbeinu Tam shkia. And Rav Moshe has a whole chiddush that he holds that 72 today is not really 72, it's really 50, because 72 is the point where it doesn't get darker, but in New York, it doesn't get darker after 50 minutes. Okay, so let's go with Rav Moshe for a minute. So now, says Rav Moshe, so I have 50 minutes from Shkia all the way till Rabbeinu Tam. Says Rav Moshe, when's the heter of the Shvusim ben Hashmashis? So Rav Moshe says, look, when I have a time which is night, according to suffix night, according to Rabbeinu Tam, and Vadai night, according to the Gra, then Rav Moshe says, then already you have to be mach. But says Rav Moshe, let's have a time which it's night according to the Gra, but it's day gomer according to Rabbeinu Tam. What's that time? Said the Goyin Rav Moshe, that's until 40 minutes, because if 50 is 72, so says Rav Moshe, then the 13 and a half minutes, which is Ben Hashmashis, turns into about 9 minutes. If the oilam's chapping, good. If you're not good in math, don't even try. But Al Kapanim, the ratio is about 3/16. And basically, Rav Moshe says that Kemoid at 72 has just become 50. Says the Goyin Rav Moshe. So therefore, the 13 and a half minutes of Ben Hashmashis has just become about 9 minutes. To make a long story short, says the Goyin Rav Moshe, by about 40 minutes, from the point of 40 minutes to 50 minutes after Shkia, so then it's suffix night according to Rabbeinu Tam, Vadai night according to the Gra. He says, now you have no Ateva. But it's like the guy in Rav Moshe, until 40 minutes after Shkia, he says, now you have the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis. Rabbi say, 40 minutes plus the 30 minutes that it cooked before Shkia. An hour? For sure, by the time that we get to the point of after this, it'll be a third cooked. It'll be a half cooked. Great. At that point, now I have nothing to worry about. At the point of Shkia, you're right, it was only a quarter cooked. But now I have the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis. And the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis says I'm allowed to be over an Isidra Banan during ben Hashmashis, L'tzarech, Oynik Shabbos, Mitzvah, etc. B'shas Hatzchak. This is the Shas Hatzchak. He's not going to have food for tonight. So Rabbi say, Kimat, it's very difficult to ever be over on Shehiyah. Lefi this, we're not going to ask it b'diavad if this is going to be his chicken for tonight. So Kidra Chayta didn't work because he's doing it for tonight meal. But he won't do Kidra Chayta here. He's going to cook it till a quarter. By Shkia, it's now for the next 40 minutes, you have the Shvusim of Heta ben Hashmashis. And the Mela, it's going to be mutter because by the time at the end of ben Hashmashis, it'll already be a half cooked, 3/4 cooked, whatever. And then for sure, we're saying on Chananya. This is what I thought. What are you going to ask? You're going to say, wait a minute, but he's Makabel Shabbos. He's Makabel Shabbos. And once he's Makabel Shabbos, Shulchan Aruch and Beis Samach Aleph Siv Dalet says you don't have the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis. So first of all, shtei tshuvas ladavar. Number one is when we say Kabbalah Shabbos, we mean at the point of not where he stops doing malacha. I'll prove it to you. Rabbi say a lot of the chaver that I'm talking to probably daven mincha right around Shkia. Maybe Chazar Hashatz goes till after Shkia and whatever. Nobody's doing malacha then. So how are you davening mincha? Because we differentiate between, some people are makabel, I am makabel Shabbos, and that's a beautiful thing, but not everybody does that. So the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis applies kolzman that you didn't accept Shabbos. If you're just not doing malacha, you still have the heter Shvusim. How long does that go for? So the item can tell me, I guess, in that bungalow minion that he's late and he's running late in and whatever, I don't know, but I remember in the Haim, some of these cover were davening around Shkia time. And that means that when are they getting to Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos? He's not doing malacha, because once you hit Shkia, you're not doing malacha. But when's he getting to Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos? He's certainly getting to Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos not a minute before, 20 minutes after Shkia, 25 minutes before after Shkia. If they're if he starts bringing out the whole singing squad and dust and everything, it could be 30 minutes after Shkia. So for sure, he still's going to have 30 minutes after Shkia. So if he has 30 minutes after Shkia, no, we're good to go. We're good to go. We have 30 minutes before Shkia, he was cooking it. 30 minutes after Shkia, which is now going to have still the heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis. So he's got an hour. By the time an hour is up, it's going to be a third cooked, for sure. So that's one thing Rabbi say. Another thing I was thinking Rabbi say is that you should know that even though we say that there's no heter of Shvusim Ben Hashmashis, once you're Makabel Shabbos, there's one Durabanan that we do allow. You know what that Durabanan is? Amir Lakum. Amir Lakum we allow even if you're Makabel Shabbos, once it's Ben Hashmashis. If it's a big tzarech mitzvah, tzarech Shabbos, etc. It's one of the most important things you'll ever learn. You go home right now, tell your wife that if ever there's a Shaila and I'm in shul and it's Ben Hashmashis, don't wait till I come home, because by the time I come home, it's probably going to be awesome. And if you can get a goy during Ben Hashmashis, you forgot to turn on a light, you forgot to turn on a hot plate, you forgot this, you forgot that, then during Ben Hashmashis, kimat always we're going to be making Amir La'akim for the tzarech mitzvah, for whatever tzarech you're going to want for when I come home. So Amir La'akim is an example of a shvus Ben Hashmashis that even when you're Makabel Shabbos, we still give you a heter. Why is it that Amir La'akim we're more makel? I was thinking the reason we're more makel than Amir La'akim is because it's a very kula dikah shvus. Why is it a kula dikah shvus? Because it's not a maisa. It's a goy's maisa. Oh, sorry, Bazaya Baisai. Shehiyah is also not a maisa. It's a shevel taisa. What's the answer of shehiyah? Is you're leaving the food in a position of where you might come to stoke. No. So maybe that Issa D'Rabbanan is a more kula dikah D'Rabbanan, that even if you were Makabel Shabbos, what I explained before, so you won't be Makabel Shabbos, you just won't do malacha from Shkia. And Bezai, you should have that Shvus and Ben Hashmashis, and this is going to be the Eitzah for the person that wants to have the chicken on Friday night. We're going to tell him to cook it even before Shabbos. By the time Shabbos Shkia comes, it's not going to be a third cook, but by the time the end of the Heter Shvus and Ben Hashmashis comes, it's going to be a third cook. And if you're scared to be saimech on what I said, so you don't have to be scared, because number one, the Chazayin Ish in Lamed Zayin Chav Zayin says that we do have the heter of Shvus and Ben Hashmashis by Shehiyah. So already you see that there's a mocking for this idea. You see it in Mefurish. Number two, and this is even more important, is that the Mishnah Berurah, and this gets a little bit complicated because the Olam didn't learn the sugya of Chazara, and certainly didn't learn the sugya of Chazara on Erev Shabbos. But there's a whole sugya of what's called Chazara on Erev Shabbos, which we're going to learn in Mitzvah Hashem, that you're not allowed to put things on a fire, even if they're cooked, if it's very, very close to Shabbos, because it's going to look like you're causing it to cook on Shabbos. The sugya Mitzvah Hashem will learn. You just, in the meantime, just have a munah. But over there, there's a Maradik in Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah and Sivkat Ayin Aleph, he quotes a Magen Avraham, and he says these words. He says, Bizman they would say Baruch very early. The Kamash Malan, the Kavan day Baruch, it's Kabbalah Shabbos, it's like Shabbos Gomer. Ubein and Shoisei Shir Yakoidim. Ayin Magen Avraham Shechaylek, Usfir, the Loy Niskaz Ashir, Rak, Koidim Chashecha. Now, when you look inside the Magen Avraham, you'll see that the Magen Avraham says that Chashecha means Chashecha. Remember, I said the Lashon of Chashecha, it doesn't say Ba Shemesh or Shkia. The Lashon of the Magen Avraham is that these Isurim start from Chashecha. So now it's true. Till now, we've been saying Shkia, and you look in the Mishnah Berurah by us, in Sivkat Yud, I think it was, Yud Aleph maybe, what we saw before Shkia, he said Shkia. It's true, he said Shkia. But Al-Kapanim, the Magen Avraham goes Chashecha. Now, I don't think you should be makel on this L'chatchila, but in the case I described, there are those that say the entire Isser doesn't even start until Chashecha. So certainly in the Shazatka case that we described, there'll be a makom to be makel until 40 minutes after Shkia, or at least 30 minutes after Shkia, when they say Mizmashir L'Yom HaShabbos. That's a boisai, a gewaldike Eitzah. Gewaldike Eitzah. Now, excuse me.
Yes. You have to speak up louder, at least tell it to me so I can put it into this mic.
It's difficult to see how.
I'm sorry, I'm being asked a question?
Difficult to see how Shavuos applies since we've been learning that the Indian of Shia is something that applies prior to when Shabbos starts. And all of a sudden now we're diving into doing a Shavuos during Shabbos.
That's a beautiful question. And that's the reason why I needed to bring the Chazon Ish and Siman Lamed Zayin Sif Kot Chav Zayin that says Mefurish that you do have the Shvusim, the heter of Shvusim, the regular klal of like Gazru b'Shvusim ben Hashmashis applies even to Shehiyah. You would have thought maybe it doesn't apply to Shehiyah. Because you see, this is like the one thing that we say even before Shabbos you have to arrange. Says the Chazon Ish, no. The heter of Shvusim ben Hashmashis, that situation of Shas Atchak that they gave a heter of ben Hashmashis Shvusim applies even to Shehiyah. What do you say, everybody say?
This is Rabbanan. Why should it apply?
The areas of Shehiyah are Yisuri Rabbanan. Why should it be different than any other shvusim? That makes sense.
What do you say, everybody say? Now like this, let's say one more thing here. Let's say I don't know, this is something I need the Olam to really think about. What happens, let's go back to our cholent case for a minute, because now we finally got chicken for Shabbos in this case, and we also have cholent for Shabbos. I just want to ask the Olam what they think about the cholent chayla. I told you that the cholent chayla is mutter, because we'll be saimach on the kol boy, we'll be saimach on the Chazon Ish, we'll be saimach on the etzim fact that it won't be ready for the meal. We had what to be saimach on. I was thinking, it's Tama Shayla by say, what happens if a person, let's go back to our case over there. They come to the bungalow, we'll make a case like this. They come up one Shabbos in the winter. It's time to go for a Shabbos in the winter in the bungalow, whatever. And they weren't so prepared. It's a group of Bachrim. So they did, my chicken eitzah, great. So they have food for tonight. My cholent eitzah, they do for tomorrow, great. Everything's great. Now, but they need a cholent. These are Bachrim Abai side. They need a cholent at 12 o'clock at night. Because they're learning a 4-hour Seder on Friday night. So they need a cholent for tonight. So this is something interesting. The Chayra, they put on this cholent. They put on 2 cholents, okay? One is in the crackbar, and they need the cholent for tonight. Now, this is interesting to say. This cholent, do we have the heter of Kiddush? In other words, by tonight, by 12 o'clock tonight, this cholent will be cooked. It definitely won't be cooked by the meal. Okay, let's use this case. We have a cholent that it won't be cooked by the meal, but it will be cooked by 12 o'clock tonight. And they want it for 12 o'clock tonight. So what's the din in that case? Do we have the heter there of Kiddush Chaisa? In other words, I guess the shayla is like this. Is the din of Kiddush Chaisa say that I would never, maybe we would say that a person is anyways never going to stoke for a snack. It's only for his ikr meal that he gets sehitzt. Is there a svar to say that when it comes to a snack, that anyways he's gonna, he's not gonna stoke? It sounds like they may do what with that. They might do it at night. In other words, maybe there's a svar to say that a person is boiled for his meal, but he's not boiled for his snack. What do you say? Everybody saying?
People eat cholent at night.
Right, but he's not boiled for the cholent at night. He's only boiled for his meal. In other words, what's the case?
Which goes back to an interesting question: who gets to decide?
In other words, just like you understand that by lunch tomorrow, the cholent we're making on why, because by tomorrow, it's going to be cooked. And if you stoke tonight, it won't help. So our case is something like very interesting. By the meal, by dinner, it won't help. And by the time the snack comes along, it'll be cooked. But it's like a new moifis. It's something that we never had before. It's like a second meal. So I have one svar that number one, it's the same heter as Kiddush Chaisa. Again, the case is I put in something raw, and it'll be cooked by 12 o'clock tonight. It won't be cooked by the meal. But it's not for tomorrow. It's not for lunch. So number one, maybe B'klal, a person's not so boiled for his snack. And number two, maybe it's just a regular heter of Kiddush Chaisa. Because when he puts it in, it's raw. And when I need it, it will be ready. Or do you say no? Because safe, this is something that it's, since he's having it tonight, so he might come to stoke to have the snack earlier. Something like that. What does the Adam say? I didn't say anybody talks about the case. This is a common case. It's not a crazy case, everybody say.
Not going to hear you from there.
What is everybody say?
Say it again. 1 second. Yeah, the problem here is where the Bachram, the child at night. So first of all, who gets to be kaveya when the Hasachadas is?
Okay, that's fine. So you always have to deal with that. What are we going to do in a family setting where the wife is Mesiach Das and the husband doesn't even know what the world is going on? Hey, Malasot,
Right.
You have to say one of them is a shliach on behalf of everyone. Hey, Malasot, no matter what, we're going to have that child.
Okay, so now, how important is the fact that some people will be looking forward to eating this child late at night?
I think
How is that
everyone's going to be looking forward to it. My question is this, number one, is it the regular heter of Kiddush Chaisa? Because by the time night comes, it's going to be ready. When I need it at 12 o'clock at night, when the Bachram need it, it's going to be ready. So why is that different? Is it that nobody ever talks about this case? They always talk about the case that it's going to be ready by tomorrow. So number one, maybe it's enough. And number two, LMI, what are you worried? You're worried that maybe he'll stoke so that the snack should be earlier. Who says you stoke for a snack?
Why not? What's the difference? A snack is food.
Because maybe he's not so boiled because he already had a meal. So maybe he's not so boiled. You don't have a raya to such a case.
Okay, the side of chitui requires behilus.
Behilus.
Requires behilus, which is we have to establish that for sure. And that behilus only applies to a meal. The Balabas is worried about her meal. A bacher is not going to stoke for his midnight show. That's what the Rav
That's the
says.
shaila. I'm a big number, but I have another shaila, which is even more pasha. Maybe stam, since it's going to be ready by 12 o'clock tonight. So then,
Are you ready?
That's it. Why is it different than the day case? What's the whole heter of Kiddush Chaisa? Because there's no point. Mamana shach. If I stoke, it won't help for the meal, and I need not stoke because by the time the 12 o'clock comes, it's going to be ready. So why is that different? 12 o'clock p.m. and 12 o'clock a.m. What's the chiluk?
Why don't, if you say you're not bowl in a certain case for a nash, why don't you say if you're slightly sick, you're also not boiled? You won't be.
No, so that again, you yourself, you personal gavra. I'm never going to look at your personal gavra because then on that Chazal are going to make light plugs. This case is a case that Chazal didn't talk about because this is an after the meal. Maybe in the lumdus of Chazal, Berega, we had our meal, and this is not for our main meal. It goes into the next category, Kloimar, tomorrow's meal. Maybe just like, there's two ways I could say it. One is, Kimai, tomorrow's meal is already a total Hesachadas, right? And why is it Hesachadas? Because it's going to get there. And number one. And number two, more so, once I ate already, that means that this entire meal is just a snack. So it's a different type of meal. So that's not like my gavra is a different type of gavra. He's a sick person. There, the gavra is a sick person. So if he's a sick person, so you'll say, I can't start saying for him he stokes, for him he doesn't stoke. Chazal made light plugs. Moshe Rabbeinu also has the takana. He's never going to stoke because he has tremendous Yir Shemayim. Chazal made light plugs because we done on the matzav of the chayfetz of the item. But okay, but Masha came over here. This item is a type of item that doesn't generate behilus. It doesn't matter that you yourself, the gavra, are not boil. I want to know maybe this is an item that doesn't generate behilus. A snack type of item, a cholent, which is a snack, does not generate behilus. Now that's what I was clearing.
My wife usually makes 2 or 3 side dishes. I only need one. So that means for the second one and the third one, I don't need I don't need grufuk tuma. There's no shia problem because I'm not bowl.
No, avada, because why? Anything for the meal, anything that's for the meal, we say he's boiled for the food of his meal. And we did not machalik which type of food within the meal. But this is not within the meal. This is not, it's a different thing. That's the shaila.
Well, restating the Rav's shaila. Is the late snack a late serach of the earlier meal? In which case it would be a problem? Or is it no, once the early meal is finished, it's over, and anything that comes afterwards has to be mitzurif to tomorrow's meal, and therefore it should be mutter. Is that a fair
in a case of where it'll vadai get cooked. Obviously, I'm only talking where vadai
has to be cooked.
Right. Now, somebody could be very extreme, which that already I don't agree with, and they'll say, you know what? Even if it won't be ready by 12 o'clock, bevadai, let's say it won't be ready, but for a snack, we're not going to stoke. Okay, that's already pushing it. I'm talking about a case of where we know by 12 o'clock it's going to be ready. And now, number one, maybe taka for a snack, we don't stoke, number one. And number two, b'chlal, it's vada going to be ready. So why is that different than 12 o'clock a.m., p.m.? What's the difference between p.m. and a.m.? If I know that for the night meal, it won't be ready, and then for the next meal, when I need it, it will be ready. So maybe there's a genug the heter of G'derech Haisa. Should know this was a Maisa Shahaya. I got called from a bunch of Bachrim with this exact story. It wasn't the country, it was a different story. I just, I Americanized it a bit. About Kapanim, it was a Maisa Shahaya. This is the exact story that they had. And that you heard a whole shir on the exact story these Bachrim had. They were Pashad a half an hour before. They wanted to know with the chicken. The chicken, I gave them the heter, do it right before 30 minutes. And by the time the meal comes, we had the heter of Shus and Ben Hashmashes. The chalent for tomorrow, they got the heter of the kolbai, and they wanted to have a chalent and midnight snack. That I was misapik about. I was very misapik about the chalent and midnight snack. At the time, I was taka makel. That was the makel. Others argued, this is a big shaila. That's a big shaila.
Okay, we'll have to be down on this shaila. Kvayda HaRav, any questions before we let the Rav go? And invite him back next week for the introduction to Hilchos Chazara. Okay, which we're planning Chazara on 3-4 weeks, so the Rav should, in his mind, be able to plan accordingly. Yashakayach, and we will think about the Rav Shaila and we'll discuss it further. Thank you very much.
Let me know if anybody says something. I'm very interested to know what they think.
Okay, very good. We have to interview a few Bachrim for this, just to get the